adoption of the minutes. Do we have a motion? Motion for the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Any, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Before I want to wait for Bishop Taylor to do the full report. I do think that we can handle the rules issues and try, since we've spent so much time on these proposed rules, and I recently did a fair amount of work on the rules with the staff to try and reflect our current practices more accurately in some respects, in some minor respects. And I think all the members of the board, for the public, the rules are available, the changes, I think at the front desk, is that right, Susan? So all the changes are available on the most recent edits. Rather than go through them one by one, are people on the board satisfied? We got these some time ago with some updates in the interim, in the time we first got them and today. Are there any issues that we should bring up, or do you want to go through them? What's the sense of the board? Do you want to go through them one by one? Do you want to adopt these changes? I think the changes, for the most part, are not controversial. I'm happy to discuss the reasons for any of them that any board member thinks should be discussed. But I don't see a reason to go through them one by one unless anybody wants to.
So I don't see a need to go through them one by one. I did have a concern about one section,
Okay.
which might be a question. So section 1-21, statement of policy, the procedures to be followed in investigating complaints shall or will be such as, in the opinion of the full board, chair or executive director, will best facilitate accurate, orderly, and thorough fact-finding. This is the one area where I would maybe we should leave it as the full board, rather than the full board, the chair, or the executive director.
Okay, so I'm just not finding the right spot here. This is a statement of policy. And I think that's fair. I'm comfortable with leaving it the full board because it's an overarching view of the rest of the policies and procedures. So Lindsay and Suda, can we pull back that change and leave that at full board? Is there any reason why we shouldn't, that staff can think about that Bennett's suggestion should not be adopted? Is Lindsay here? No. Okay, yes. So you're okay with this? We'll leave it at full board? That's the way it was originally, right?
It was board, but it can be full board.
Now let's just call it full board, because board can be confused with panels too.
Board is defined. Board is defined as the agency CCRB. It's different than the definition of full board.
I think it should be full board then, which is the board itself, the members of the board. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I mean, the additional concern was the way it's drafted now, we can potentially have inconsistencies where the executive wants to go one way, the chairperson one way, the full board another. So it sort of makes sense just to have it vested in the full board.
And I'm fine with that. Are we all okay with that? Good. So we'll make that change. Any other changes that anybody would like to make or suggest before we move this adoption so that we can put it back through this lengthy and arduous process? Okay, so
I think the one thing that needs to be raised is, I think it's in section 1-35, subdivision D, it's regarding the post. The police commissioner's final determination notifying complainants and victims.
Right, so-
Final action taken by the police commissioner.
okay, so I understand Anna's point. Thank you for pointing that out. The issue there is that the law department has opined that our letters to complainants with identifying information about officers are appropriate for the results of panel decisions and the results of decisions that we send over, final decisions to the police department in all respects. They have not yet finally opined on the issue of whether we are allowed to provide to complainants by name of police officer the decisions that are the final decisions of the police commissioner that are in CCRB cases only, obviously, not other disciplinary cases. We have an indication from them that they do believe that it's captured by the same reasoning as the other letters that we write, but we do not have a final decision on that. So what I would suggest is, in adopting the rules, we adopt it subject to the Corp Council's final decision on that issue. If they finally decide, as they indicate they are likely to decide, we will be fine. If they say otherwise, then we will have to bring it back and adjust it accordingly. Is that all right? That makes sense to you? Okay. Anybody want to move this package of amendments and fixes to the rules?
I will move that we adopt the proposed rules as with the one caveat that you mentioned.
Okay. Second? Got a second? Good. All right. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Okay, good. So then we will submit them, depending on what the Corp Council says on the issue outstanding, and hopefully move them through the process and go to a public hearing and get public comment and assess that public comment on the rules before they're finalized or amended by a public comment. There are a number of potential board resolutions, and I guess the issue here tonight with respect to these board resolutions is, given that we have 7 members present and it takes a majority to adopt board resolutions, we have 3 vacancies. So 7 of 10, 8 of 10 will be here shortly. So we could only adopt these rules if everybody is in favor of them. And that's not at all clear to me. I haven't discussed these rules with any of the members of the board in advance. I think these are just discussions that we're going to have on the merits of the rules as people feel appropriate. So let me just get a straw sense here of the resolutions as to whether, have all of you reviewed these proposed resolutions? Okay. Are there any people who, as a straw matter, are opposed to any of these resolutions, and if so, which ones, so that we can see whether we pass the other ones and hold back the ones that they need in opposition to, since we would meet them in tonight?
So the last one, I just had a question about the thinking behind the last resolution.
On reopening cases?
Yes.
That's a temporary interim fix because of the pending board rule adoption. Because everything in there is in the board rules. But in the meantime, we need action on that as a practical matter for the ED to make those decisions, and that's why that court resolution is before us. Are there any other concerns with these resolutions that would lead us not to bring them up? I'll bring them up one by one, but I'm just trying to see whether it makes sense. Okay, all right.
I find myself having a lot of questions about them,
Well, let's
the
talk
background of the...
Sure, let's talk about them. So, which ones do you have questions about? Let's discuss it, right now, while we can, and see whether we can either allay your questions or put it over to another time.
Right. I mean, in general, I think on their face, I would support them, but I feel like I need more information about what is current practice and what is the purpose of actually passing these resolutions. I mean, we have partners in government
which ones do you need more information about?
I guess, things like the body cameras during home entries, surveillance cameras at precincts and other NYPD stations open to the public. And, those are the two main ones. I guess I also just wanted to clarify something about the delegation of authority to the ED to add allegations to CTS, since I noticed that the list of allegations that we have in our memo, actually, it seems like in reviewing cases, in my experience reviewing cases, there are many allegations that are, I guess, that I come across that aren't in this list. So I just wanted to understand, is this resolution to basically update our system with things that, allegations that are actually currently kind of in use as well?
Well, let me try and address a couple of things about the cameras in both what we're proposing the board to do. Again, it's something we can debate, and if there's not unanimity tonight, we can put it over or do whatever is appropriate. And then maybe Nina can discuss the allegations issue, because I'm not as familiar with that as I am with the others. And we'll go one by one if we can achieve that. The resolution on the cameras for home entries, that is, body cameras for home entries, is proposed on the basis that I think many of us, I hope all of us, I think all of us, have seen a large number of cases where complaints are generated by home searches on one hand, and warrant home searches, some warrant home searches, and some warrantless home searches. And some in each category are valid and some are invalid. The entry into the home itself is usually not something that a camera is going to have much probative value for. But what occurs once officers are in the home, and as we know, that happens very frequently in the very early morning, when the warrant executions or narcotics raids, and then there are many, it also happens at other times of the day, but it certainly happens very frequently in the morning when people are sleeping, when people are with kids in the home in a state of some undress or preparing for the day if they're up. And it's an incredibly disruptive and problematic process, which may very well be totally legal when the entry is authorized by probable cause in the warrant. The question of what happens when officers get in people's homes is one that I think is a very controversial one in our cases and among our panels. And there's a lot of difficulty in determining who is credible in those situations, and whether a preponderance of the evidence can ever be marshaled for the allegation, or for the exoneration, or for the unfounded, or we end up on a lot of unsubstantiated cases. Because we all know that cameras are coming, body cameras is something that Commissioner Bratton is advocating strenuously, and while there are a number of experiments going on right now, they are certainly not uniform procedure for all of us. In fact, there are very few of them now, but they're going to be expanding slowly, and it's going to take probably a couple of years at least before all officers are wearing body cameras. So the sense of this proposal is to call upon the police department. All we can do is recommend to the police department. We can't require the police department to do anything. But what we can do, given our problem of trying to assess these cases on an evidentiary basis, and how much of an advantage it is to have video in assessing cases, as we're learning day by day how important video is, that we are recommending that for our purposes of proving cases that where officers are acting properly and they're accused of misconduct wrongfully, or where they do things that are misconduct and the complainant has a basis for making those allegations, that video would be very helpful. And that these particularly pristine situations in which video can be extremely helpful to our functioning as an agency and making determinations. And so the idea is to prioritize camera use, since it's going to be limited among officers, to these situations where they're planned in advance. Obviously, there are going to be home entries that are not planned, and there are not going to be cameras there, but the lion's share of them are planned home entries. And they should, in my view, have cameras. And if they have cameras, I think it's very likely that we will be able to resolve these cases much more definitively. And they are some of the most important cases we have, because of some of the most serious privacy invasions that we find. So that's the sense of that. The second one, that is advocating, again, recommending to the police department that cameras be put in the areas in front of in the public areas, in front of the desks at police precincts, or in the public areas where people, the community and the public come into police precincts, and to NYC precincts, and to transit precincts, if you will, transit police centers. All forms of public access to the police department's areas where people come in to request CCRB complaints, complain, do whatever they're going to do, is to put cameras in those areas. Currently, there are no cameras in the areas out that are public in front of usually the sergeant or captain's desk in police precincts. We have 237 complaints this year that take place right in the area of the police precinct, in the public area of the police precinct. I've noticed in my panels many situations that arise out of events that take place there. Given the fact that every NYCHA lobby, every NYCHA hallway, every NYCHA elevator, every bodega, every business, every street now has surveillance everywhere, and cameras are everywhere, including additional telephone cameras or mobile cameras. It just seems to me that it's a very strange notion that in a police precinct, which is a public location, there's no surveillance camera. And I think we would be aided again in our decisions of cases that arise out of those, that area, that physical area, and deciding that the police officers acted properly or that the police officers didn't. And instead of having a lot of he said, she said testimony. And, you know, we would shorten and clarify our work. Look, videos aren't the answer to everything. Videos don't tell the whole story, as you all know. But they certainly help in a lot of cases. So that's the reasoning behind these. And all we're doing is recommending and calling upon, as a board that has to struggle with these cases, calling on the police department to give us the assistance of having video in these situations.
When I review many cases that take place in precinct houses and holding cells, and the same thought comes to my mind as well. Wouldn't it be great to have a camera? But I guess I wonder, and this is not to, we were given some statistics about the number of cases that kind of fit this profile, but I guess I wonder what the breakdown of those cases are in terms of this, say something like a discourtesy, offensive language, which may not be provable with a camera that may not have audio.
It may be that we would want to suggest audio as well, but at least you can, we have a lot of cases where we have those allegations, and the video helps. It's not definitive, but it helps. The best thing are telephones, obviously, because they have audio. And sometimes you're actually right, audio is more effective than video. But we're trying to do the best we can, and given the fact that video seems to be the main, or is becoming the main source of our capacity to make definitive decisions about these allegations, we are simply trying to enhance the degree to which we have video available. Nina, do you want to address the allegations?
Sure.
Issue?
So currently, regarding your question, Joe, about the delegation of authority to me for adding allegations to CTS, as you know, the CCRB investigators currently use the complaint tracking system to identify and select various subcategories that are raised in a complaint of police misconduct. And really, the thought and the idea here is just to streamline operations, right? Because CTS contains these specific subcategories, but they may not be very specific in certain instances. And to make these subcategories more flexible to our investigative operations as well as to the policy work that we now have the policy unit doing, there's a need to basically update the CTS allegations from time to time. So for example, right now there's a subcategory of premises entered and or search allegation, right? It would be better to have that broken out into premises entered and a separate subcategory for premises search. Similarly, offensive language involving gender identity, that should be a subcategory as well. And then there's also a single allegation or subcategory for chokehold. But it would be better to reflect the circumstances of the complaint or case and have a subcategory for chokehold and another one for restriction of breathing, because they may not be one and the same. So I think it's very important to parse out the actual allegations as they stand factually. So in the past practice was to have the board approve the addition or the modification of the CTS sub-allegation, the allegations to a resolution, but that's time-consuming and cumbersome. And so in order to streamline the process in the agency and our operations going forward, I think it would be best for that delegation of authority to be in-house, in conjunction with consultation with the board, of course, and with the executive staff.
I completely understand. I also wanted to clarify because the list of allegations that was provided to us doesn't seem to include, doesn't seem exhaustive. When I compare it to other just cases from recollection of the types of, like for example, there is a taser allegation on this list. There is refuse to provide medical treatment allegation. So I mean, I don't think this list is exhaustive, but this is currently what is in our system. So then part of this process will be also be updated.
There is an updated side of the same.
Okay, so I stand corrected on that, but I think taser, preventing recording may not be on these lists.
Right, so that's the idea, is to update it and streamline it without having to go through the time-consuming task of waiting until a board meeting.
So I found this discussion very helpful. I know I'm fully on board with supporting the resolutions.
All right, so let's go through these. I happen to hear a lot about each person's views on these. So let's go through them then. On the first one, it's the resolution to allow us to recommend, this is again a recommendation to the police department that we be allowed to have dual penalties when a panel decides that there is a CD inappropriate as a result of disposition. That we also be allowed, they resisted this by the way, we may not adopt it, because they may not adopt any of our requests. But the idea here is to allow us to say we would have a CD disposition and we would like training, formalized training or other training. I think that that is an appropriate thing to do. In many cases, we feel that training is necessary, but we do not want to give only training because we feel that it's too serious to give only training. So I know that's come up on a number of situations. So the idea here would be, for instance, there may be a number of cases where we wouldn't do charges, where we would do a CD and training. Or whether, because if you do charges, it's silly to do training. You might feel that training was more important and therefore do a CD because it's a serious case, as opposed to just sending it for charges. So there's a number of possibilities gives us more flexibility in a sense of the capacity to shape the resolution of a panel disposition more thoughtfully about a particular case. So that's why this resolution is just calling upon them to do it. I'm not sure they will. They've resisted it so far when we discussed it. We did it for a while, it doesn't matter, because it wasn't included. And they told us they didn't want it to come over that way. So all we're doing here is trying to reflect the past practice that was rejected and saying that as a board, we would like that option. So anybody want to move this? I'm supposed to read the resolution into the record. Sorry. The resolution that I'm going to seek to have moved is it is resolved that unless and until the board otherwise resolves, one, the board calls upon the NYPD to allow board panels to issue recommendations for both command discipline and formalized training for instances of police misconduct in which both penalties and retraining are appropriate. Command discipline would be reflected in the officer's record.
So I also move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The second one is the one that Nina just discussed about adding allegations. It reads, it is resolved that unless and until the board otherwise resolves, one, the board delegates the authority to add allegations in the complaint tracking system to the executive director. Move.
I also move.
Second? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? The third one is, it is resolved that unless and until the board otherwise resolves, the board calls upon the NYPD to equip members of the service to conduct home entries with body-worn cameras, which will provide evidence that is relevant and useful for CCRB investigations. Motion?
Also move.
Any second? Okay, second. All in favor? Any opposed? The next one is, it is resolved that unless and until the board otherwise resolves, one, the board calls upon the NYPD to install cameras at all police precincts, commands, and transit stations where arrestees are held and members of the public may enter. This will provide clarifying evidence for the many police civilian incidents in police buildings that become CCRB complaints. Motion?
I will move.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed? And the last one is these, this temporary, we'll call it a temporary because the rules if adopted will take over for this, capacity of the executive director to reopen cases. It is resolved that unless and until the board otherwise resolves, one, the board delegates the authority to the executive director to decide all requests to reopen cases, including cases that were fully investigated by the CCRB, and cases that were truncated or closed without a full investigation. Motion, move, second? Second? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, excellent. We have adopted the resolutions, and I believe that is all I have for the report from the chair. And we can go to, do you want to do the public comment first? And then, unless you want, everybody has had access to the materials at the front desk that provide the monthly statistics. Do we have a list of people who want to speak, or if anybody wants to speak, please take the podium. Do you have a list? Sir, come on up, Mr. Ritter. Good. Why don't you start? See if anybody else wants. No. You start.
Go right ahead. Administrators of Manhattan Sanitation E10, upon learning trade waste were left on floor of apartment 5 by an HPD payee contractor, New York City. Trade waste refers to used sheetrock, etc., etc., etc. Contractors, mechanics, ripped out used sheetrock of the ceiling of apartment 5 with long wooden prods to fully expose joint sewage pipe, rupture or rip, North Wing, 1880, 7th Avenue, Power Boulevard, also known as Power Boulevard. Manhattan Sanitation E10, commanded tenant, do not touch trade waste. Report to Community Board 10, Manhattan. Mind you, this Negro developer had been removed from the property by Corporation Council due to pocketing $200,000 of New York City money. Negro developer evidently invited himself back on the property, racially attacked the HPD plumbing contractor's payee. Telling Chinese worker, tenants voted for him to come back on the property. In fact, tenants voted him out of the property through 111 Center Street twice, also known as the court-appointed fiduciary. There are those in the 28th precinct community who hold Franklin Delano Roosevelt brought Black Americans out of the Republican Party into the Democratic Party. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the people in the 28th precinct say that is done by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Blacks stopped voting for the Republicans and stopped voting for the Democrats. 28 precinct people say that. Also, that 1940 American high school history book also showed the spiritual or political leader of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, was subdued year 1865, but by an all-Negro trial jury, all-Negro hung jury, all-Negro trial jury could not reach a decision on Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis walked free due to an all-Negro hung jury. It was reported by Channel 13 television that the trial at Nuremberg in the Netherlands, judges 1945-46, had gallows platforms mounted and in position right behind the court, the curtains in the court, indicating the kangaroo court. All during the trial, a gallows platform right behind the judge's chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Dunn?
Good evening. Ben, welcome back. I was expressing concern about your welfare at the last meeting, and you did not appear. Having proposed at the prior meeting that the board start referring to the DA's officers who you found have engaged in false statements. And I'm still curious about the status of that proposal. I think at the meeting 2 months ago, there was going to be a subcommittee to address that. I don't know if any subcommittee has been formed or any action has been taken. But I want to encourage you to pursue that issue. I think it's an important issue.
There is a subcommittee, and it is definitely a very high priority question as to how we're going to go forward with making known to the various law enforcement agencies or having them have access to us with respect to false statements. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. So if there's a subcommittee meeting, I hope the public will know about that because that should be open to the public. Those meetings are, the agencies typically had subcommittees, they've been open to the public. So I ask that the public be given notice of that.
I think, you maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when meetings are purely subcommittee meetings, that's true, but I think when there's a combination of staff and board members, it's not the case that it has to be a part of the meeting, but I could be corrected on that. Maybe Brian Chris may know sure it's noticed if there's an obligation to do so, and maybe even if there isn't.
I appreciate that on both counts. And Sal and Lindsay, I want to commend you on your votes on the resolution. Good for you. I would not have predicted that you would have voted for all 5 of those, nor would Richard have, so I'm just happy to see that's what happened. I will say on this camera business, I'm not sure there was a whole lot of discussion or consideration of some of the privacy issues here. I totally understand the interest in accountability and having cameras in places. But the resolution about having cameras, for instance, in any place where a prisoner might be, I think covers pretty much every square inch of a precinct.
Let me be clear, the resolution does not cover cell areas. It covers only the area, the public area in front of the public areas of the precinct.
Well, okay, maybe that's one way to read it. It says,
Let's go for the record that that's the intention of that section. If there's no intent to have cameras, that's a whole other issue, which I agree with you, involves much more contemplation than the simple issue which we passed, and we intended to pass, which was only for the area, public area, where people make complaints and approach a desk or a reception area where these incidents that we were describing have routinely or regularly occurred, I should say.
okay, I accept that clarification, Richard. I just noticed that the resolution says where arrestees are held. So, arrestees are generally not held in front of the desk. I mean, of course, if there's somebody in front of the desk, but
I understand your confusion, but let's clarify that the intent is not to have, and we should make this clear for the record, that the intent is not to call upon the police department to place cameras in anywhere other than in the public areas of the precinct, where the entryway, where the public enters the precinct and other police stations, where we have had the experience of a number of confrontations or difficulties occurring that arise from complaints, or resulting complaints, I should say.
all right, thank you. All right, in terms of the report, maybe you haven't had a chance to give the report yet, so I don't want to step on your presentation, but I do want to comment on it because I see you have dramatically changed the report to your credit. I find it to be a much improved report, and I think there's a lot more information in there, and so good for you and the staff who worked on that. I do have some comments about it, some good, mostly questions. So on the age of the docket, the numbers are so good, frankly, it's hard to believe. But I will believe it. I don't think you're playing with the numbers. I know that you report a total of 2 cases between 12 and 18 months. Assuming that's true, that's astonishing and good for you and good for the agency.
We should hire an auditor and send them in.
Well, there we go. That's the good news. All right. You folks spend a lot of time talking about the substantiation rate. And I see that you take a lot of institutional pride in the substantiation rate. I understand that. I, for one, have never felt that there was a particularly good or bad substantiation rate. But what I'm struck by in the report, and this was true of the semi-annual report, is that what you don't talk about is the substance behind the substantiation rate. And the substance is you have seemingly a record number of officers against whom you subbed complaints this month. You have to look, do a little bit of digging, but you would find a table that says there were 76 officers against whom you subbed reports just last month. And there are now 396 officers for the year to date through the end of September. Those are enormous numbers. They're enormous increases from a year ago. They're coming at a time when there's a lot of discussion, including from this agency, about how much better cops are on the street, a narrative with which I have taken issue, and I do not think that this agency should be pushing that narrative. And when I see numbers like this, where you point out a statistical point that's good for the agency, but you don't engage with the facts on the ground behind that statistic, I am concerned about that. And I think the headline here is record number of officers found to have engaged in misconduct last month. And to date, twice as many officers have been found by this agency to have engaged in misconduct this year than just a year ago. And I think you need to acknowledge that, and I think you need to start talking about it. I think it's great to talk about the substantiation rate. That can be a good thing for the agency. But what you should be spending more time talking about is what that substantiation rate tells us about the frequency of police misconduct.
I'd just like to comment on that, just very briefly. I don't dispute any of the numbers you're saying, but I must say that it's pretty clear to me that the substantiation rate is driven by video evidence that is now coming to the fore, in addition to the fact that investigations are being closed within about 3 months, and they're going to go to panels within about 4 months, and that means evidence is preserved and witnesses' memories are more clear than ever before. And quite frankly, I think the numbers are minuscule compared to the total number of complaints and to the activities, the interactions between police officers and civilians overall, and especially, and in fact, one cannot infer, in my view, anything from the increased numbers of substantiated cases of misconduct about overall civilian-police interactions. I think it has very little, it's not probative to say that 300 as opposed to 150 is meaningful when you have 25,000 officers interacting with the public in the month. So I just don't say one way or the other. It may be right. Maybe it's not going up or down, but there are, it's an impossible inference to make that because we're subbing more officers for reasons that we can identify, maybe better evidence in video, that means that that interactions are either better or worse. I don't think one can draw any conclusions.
Well, Richard, that's a fair methodological question. I am personally troubled by what seems to be the inclination to explain away what appears to be an increase. But setting that aside, if what you were doing, and I don't mean you personally, I mean the agency, was saying, okay, we have this substantial increase in the number of officers against whom we've substantiated complaints. What is that about? Let's figure that out. Fair enough. I don't see that in this report. What I see is a trumpeting of the 29%. What I see is the emphasis on numbers that are going down at the exclusion of numbers that are going up. What I see in the semi-annual report is a big push to suggest that a drop in complaints somehow means that cops are being better on the street, which, by your logic, and I understand the notion, raises the exact same issue. There are lots of people who think there's no relationship between the number of complaints the agency gets and police officer conduct. But if that's your view, you can't, when you see numbers that you like, say, those numbers show the cops are being better. And when the numbers you don't like, say, well, those numbers don't really mean anything. And what I'm saying is, I am struck by this in the semi-annual report. There were, in both those, this report and that report, there were huge increases in the number of officers against whom complaints have been subbed. Those huge increases in numbers were not acknowledged, they were only buried in the table, and there was no effort to come to grips with the significance or non-significance of that. And what I'm saying to you is I think you at least have to grapple with it, even if you want to have one view on it and others might have another.
Well, I think we are grappling with it, and I think we'll continue to grapple with it, but I think the grappling with it has to do with the method by which we are investigating and gathering evidence and using the evidence to reach conclusions which are qualitatively different, let alone dramatically different than they were a year ago. It's a remarkable turnaround that this staff, this investigative staff, has made in the last year that allows for the gathering of evidence, which is so much more probative than in the past because of the delays primarily in the video. Secondarily, the issue of complaints going down is a much more probative sample, in my view, and one can infer things. I don't think one can be very confident about what it means. But the fact of the matter is when you have complaints dropping from 7,000 to 4,500 or thereabouts, that means something, especially with an agency that has gained profile and I hope gained credibility. So it's to me there are some arguable inferences, but I don't think anybody can be very confident in any conclusions that one draws from these numbers.
All right, you cannot be confident in those conclusions. What I'm saying is I have questions about the conclusions. What I'm saying is the agency is not even confronting what I think is the salient fact here, which is that there are many more police officers in 2015 who have sub-complaints than a year ago. And maybe that's because you're investigating faster, and maybe that's because video is more available, and maybe what that leads one to conclude is the substantiation rate from the beginning of time should have been 30%. And what was happening all these years was because the agency took forever to investigate complaints, and there wasn't video, they were reporting substantiation rates of 7%. And we should go back and conclude that, in fact, there were 50,000 additional cops in the last 5 years who should have had sub cases or not. But I'm just saying, I don't see that engagement at an analytical level here. What I see is too much, from my perspective, of the police department narrative. And on the complaints, for instance, I see, and this is in the report, they're pointing out that year-to-date complaint numbers are down. What is not mentioned is a quite substantial statistical increase in complaint numbers this month as opposed to a year ago. I'm not saying that one is more important than the other. I'm saying you can't pick and choose because you like one category number because it's going in the right direction and you ignore another category number because it's going in a different direction. Enough about that. I noticed in the report that there's been a substantial decrease in recommended penalties from the agency. This is on page 20. And I'm just going to ask you, I'm just going to put it on the table now, we can talk about it going forward. I have questions. You have quite significantly emphasized the fact that the department is more frequently agreeing with your penalty recommendations. And you treat it as a good thing, and I think in the abstract that's a good thing also. But when I look at that table, I see that you pretty much flipped the percentage of cases that get charges with the percentage of cases that get instructions. And it is no surprise to me if that's what's really happening. The department is agreeing with you a lot more because what you are proposing much more frequently is nominal discipline. Indeed, I consider instruction not to be discipline at all. With respect to the numbers on videos, Richard, I understand the video point. It's an important point. The table you have here just talks about percentages of cases with video. It doesn't have any numbers of cases with video. So I can't tell if you've got 10 cases in a month or 100 cases in a month, and I would ask you to include that because it makes it easier for somebody like me to say, okay, video in fact is a big part of it because many of the cases have video. Well, it's not a big part, it's a small number of video. Finally, I would mention one significant omission. I'm going to write you a more detailed letter about some of the smaller details, but the NYPD dispositional table seems not to be in here, which is a very important table, and that was the table of what the department had done with all your cases for the month and for the year. It included such things as the dupes. That table seems to be completely gone, and I apologize if I had missed it, but I feel like that was a very important table to give the public a picture of, for the year-to-date and for the month, what had happened to all the department dispositions, and that does not seem to be here. All right, the final thing I would say is thank you for getting the rules done. We, of course, will have detailed written comments about them and talk about them for months. Richard, I want to thank you for the effort you have made to make the rulemaking process as public as you have. I think it's been quite important. I don't think you needed to do that, and I thank you for everything. So.
Just so you know, Chris, the NYPD final penalties for APU cases and penalties for allegations imposed by the police commissioner for non-APU cases is on page 25.
No, I saw that. Those are different tables. For instance, there's no way you can count dupes if you went through this by hand individually.
Appreciate that. We have Rick Robinson. Mr. Robinson.
Hi, Rick Robinson from the NAACP in North New Jersey. North New Jersey is currently on the way for the CCRB. So the staff, Executive Director, Ms. Malik, our departmental leads have been influential involving mentoring me, so I can actually bring this profile over to the city of North and help out with the establishment of the CCRB. I briefly glanced the report for the day, and I actually went over your information that was given to me on my first visit. In my opinion, and some people in North New Jersey, very impressive. There has been steady growth. When you're dealing with these kind of serious instances, it's really, really tough. So I'm going to give your board and meaning your staff kudos, because it is a very, very tough thing to do. And Ms. Emery, you should be very proud of the CCRB, the situation with current numbers. All right.
I'm very proud of the staff. This board, I think, is all very proud of us.
Yeah, you should be. There is room for growth, and I was pretty much informed of that at my first visit, and those are things that are being worked on. But let me tell you about the situation in North New Jersey. We are currently at 50% pertaining to getting established. And again, I am leaning on the New York CCRB for any kind of inclusion of help and understanding. And I heard you earlier today with your explanation for clarity on certain matters. And I have to tell you, it was needed. And it was applicable, and it was excellent. So I congratulate you on that. You had a number of high-profile cases recently. I had to congratulate you on that. Newark was, I would say, they had an awful internal affairs unit. Department of Justice did an investigation and study, and it pretty much concluded that over 500 cases were not recorded with the internal affairs. So you had some residents who were feeling slighted. There was numerous misconduct issues. So we feel that it is necessary for CCRB to be established. And again, I just want to say thank you, Nina, and to your staff. Wonderful people. Mr. Emery, you should be very proud.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have Rick Robinson's there. We have one. Oh, sorry, Jose LaSalle.
If you want me to go again, I'll go again.
All right. Thank you. No, this was LaSalle. Thank you.
First, I'm gonna say I'm not gonna sound too friendly like everybody else that's been up here, so y'all know that anyway. So there won't be too many thanks and congratulations, especially coming from me. One of the reasons is because first, I'm Jose LaSalle, the founder of Cop Patrol Unit. I got a group of about 50 to 60 brothers and sisters that I sent out different parts of the community in the 5 boroughs. We usually go to the precincts where CCRB complaints are high, and also to the precincts where we get intel from people within the community that there is a lot of police harassment. Main objective is to just video record everything. We kind of mastered the NYC patrol guide because we feel that that's very important, especially with the broken windows that Bill Bratton had brought back here and had been implementing. In community of color, we kind of figured that that would be the broken windows for the NYPDs. So we make sure that they be held accountable either by us documenting it and exposing it through social media. We have a very big social media, different groups and organizations, and we make sure we spread it all around. To the point where many officers actually tells us to please don't put them on YouTube, please don't put them on social media, which shows us that we're doing a lot more work than the CCRB themselves are doing. Because when they see us, they straighten up. When they see us, their attitude changes. And I know that many people in this board here, or anyone in this board, will never be in the street video recording police, or never be in the community of color where it's most effective. So I will never see them there. So for them to get credit for substantiated cases because of videographers like myself who put their body on the line every single day, and other videographers who take it upon themselves and say, you know what, I'm tired of seeing this. I'm tired of police officers coming in my community, harassing, dehumanizing, traumatizing, criminalizing, brutalizing, and even murdering our brothers and sisters. So these are the people that are standing up, and that is the only reason they're able to substantiate these claims now. It's not because of what they're doing, because what they've been doing for a long time. And to take videographer for it to take place like it has now, for the substantiating, I can't give them no credit for that. Another thing that I want to share is, where I'm going to lead into my case too. This is a folder I have here of CCRB complaint. CCRB complaint made by me and my group of cop officers. And I'll get into that in a little while and tell you the story about that and where the contradiction resides within that. We feel very upset because of, I know we've been getting credit from NWACP from New Jersey about the James Blake issue of these so-called high-class cases. We can't give you no credit for that. Because the simple fact is, there's other cases that has been laying on your desk for years, which has been substantiated with video, and they still laying on your desk. And that is sad. They only took, 28 days, not even 30 days, for y'all to look into the James Blake case. Not even 30 days. I mean, nowhere, I've been trying to find where in the CCRB, since y'all been around, has any case been looked at that fast. I haven't found it. And if y'all can find it, I would like to get it. And you know what that tells the community and what tells the people in my community? It tells us that you have to be somebody that is famous, you have to be somebody that is rich, and you have to be somebody that the media is going to go crazy, they're saying over, because that's what the people want, and that's how we substantiate the case. And that brings me to my case. When I was video recording, these are the bruises that I gained from being assaulted by police. So these are the bruises I gained. I ended up being in the hospital for like about 3 days with a concussion. And they forcibly charged me with, 1 was jaywalking, and 2 with carrying possession of a scanner. These cases have been dropped because they was falsified cases anyway, so they wasn't going away. They have been dropped. Then I sent the information to the CCRB. They had the hospital report, they had the pictures, they had the video of the police officer shining the light at me until the point where the video went dead because I was snatched up, thrown against the fence, and my phone was grabbed and slammed against the floor. So that was given to the board, and with other evidence. And this is why I get back to the board. Right? Abuse of authority, unsubstantiated. There's video of this too. Force, exonerated. Force, again, that's C, exonerated. Discourtesy, unsubstantiated. Discourtesy, unsubstantiated. abuse of authority unsubstantiated, abuse of authority unsubstantiated, abuse of authority unsubstantiated, abuse of authority officer unidentified. And I gave them information, they identified the officer, because if I have the information, they have it too. Discourtesy unsubstantiated. Other misconduct, officer 5 failed to prepare memo, book entry required by patrol, guide, procedure, and 2 months left. So that was the other misconduct. So now, and I also requested for it to be reopened, because I feel that, one, that's a slap in my face for all the hard work that I do in the community, because I'm out there putting my life on the line against the police officers who don't really like me, because they don't like what I'm doing, because I'm documenting them not following the proper procedures and protocol. But then, the Blake issue happens, and this, what's funny is that's what I'm going to show the contradiction. This other case is also about a sergeant who was interfering with me while I was trying to record him. And said in the video, this case, which is after this one, and I guess during the Blake incident, in this case, it was the same thing that has happened with this, that started this situation here. The guy was arrested, falsely accused, and assaulted. So in this case, abuse of authority with this sergeant is substantiated and formalized training. And I have so many cases here that they have dismissed, even with video. I mean, maybe it's just against how much patrol unit that they have something personal. I don't know. I guess that's something else. All right, but I will request for all these cases to be open, so it'll be on the record. And I will come back and let y'all know and keep you updated on what's happening in these cases. Because the simple fact is, if James Blake could get that type of treatment, but then people that's out there every single day facing this type of brutality from police cannot get that same respect, cannot even get that same courtesy, then the CCRB board shouldn't even exist. And we want to make sure that, through my groups, through my brothers and sisters, we'll make sure we expose everything that we could about the CCRB, what they do and what not they doing, what they're taking credit for, which they're not doing, but they're taking credit for, because it's all over. Saying they have no problem talking to the New York Post, talking to the Daily News, pointing out how you saying successful they've been. But their success don't come without them saying the people that's out there every single day. And I'm gonna finish up with, so I will, Emery, I will bring these cases and actually reopen them. For one, they should have never been closed. And I guess I'll bring that to y'all within the next few days. Another thing that I want to say is that it is hard for, I work with other parents that have lost their loved ones. From Kamani Gray to Chantel Davis, Ronaldo Cueva, and Ever Gardner family. I work with so many different families, and it's sad that even their cases will sit on their desk for years or for a year, right, before they even think about coming up with a decision, and it's sad. And we need to look into that, because all these people that's praising these boards, see, done already. It's gone. You know what I'm saying? All these people praising these boards, praising this board, I need to realize that they're not representing the community. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're praising the board for what they're doing, and police brutality is still rampant in my community, then they're not doing anything. Like I said, we do a lot more work than these community boards does, or will ever do, because we're out there where the war against people of color is taking place. Like I said, this is the father they want. They would not go to my community. Ain't none of them will walk one day with me in my community where I'm doing cop watch to see what I see. You know what I'm saying? But many of them will have no problem checking out my YouTube or looking into the YouTubes of other people to see what's happening out there. Oh, they have no problem sitting at home and doing that. And that is something we need to check. And I'm gonna make sure that I keep coming to the community board, the CCRB, and keep showing the contradiction that exists in this board. Because I'm not satisfied, the people in my community here in the Bronx is not satisfied. Take a look. Take a look who's here. Where is my community at? And even the ones that I said come so y'all can witness this, you know what they said? They said, I'll stay home and see it in live stream. Why would I go and listen to them say all that crap is going to go on? To listen to that Hollywood show that they're going to show. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be very aware, and like I said, ain't nobody in this board speak for my community or for the people of color. And much blessing.
I would just like to address that, Mr. LaSalle. I know that you don't know me personally, but I grew up in Corona and Elmhurst, and I've spent my entire life serving the public. So I understand what you're saying, and I don't know when your letters were dated, but certainly this agency exists for people of all communities across this entire city. I don't know when your letters were dated, but if they warrant reopening, certainly, my chief of investigations is here right now, Mr. Thomas Kim. I invite you to talk to him after this meeting is over. And if your cases are warranted to be reopened, believe me, they will be, and they will be looked into.
Joe Smart, Turvio.
And I'd just like to, I wasn't planning to, just like to respond to that comment. I'd like to make sure everyone's aware, I'm sure most people in this community are aware, that not every neighborhood, not every community in the city is policed the same way. So you should acknowledge that before you make future statements like
I
that.
absolutely do.
Okay.
Having grown up in Corona and Elmhurst, Queens, I
Where do you
absolutely
live now?
Thank you.
Where do you live now?
That's not public
Okay.
information.
Well, we live in the hood, and this is where the police are coming down now.
That was more than
Okay.
a silver spoon. my
So, okay, look where you're at, and look where we're at. So, Mr. Emery, glad to be in the presence of the cop bashing arm of the NYC. I think that's what Mr. Lynn Patnich called you guys, right? Because he didn't like your, I guess you guys recommended like 3 days lost paid vacation for a case, and he thought that was like the end of the world. For the record, I don't think you're cop bashing, and although I know you work for the NYC and you're pretty close with Mr. Dunn, you guys are nowhere near being labeled cop bashing wing of the NYC. When I tell people in my community that the chair of the CCRB's son works in the NYPD under Commissioner Bratton, they're like the cynicism that has already existed around oversight of police in this city for 20 years, it just goes even further. This is, when you guys talk about the number of cases you substantiate, I hope you guys realize that the samples that you're working with are like a fraction of the actual interactions that we see in our communities. Because most of the people in communities of color are so cynical about government agencies, and especially, I know Newark is looking into CCRB, but let me tell you right now, talk to people who've been around me, talk to the Norman Siegel who helped create this agency, and I'll tell you tonight, this isn't a good model. This is good politics. The greatest politics, I think, what explained by Mr. Dunn, to his credit, is he said, look at what narratives you're putting out to the media. Lower number of substantiated cases. This is politics. And everything that you guys do, I hope you understand it. And if I'm like looking at this thing about you guys are having a resolution, which had no debate up here, which was just unanimous, I guess you guys talked about it before the public hearing, about putting cameras into people's homes or putting them into on officers who do home invasions or something. Like the debate over body cameras is like up in the air right now. I don't believe in body cameras. People, activists, even the NYCOU or some of the other civil liberties groups, they're not sure about the surveillance side of body cameras, and you guys are taking a political position going out saying, we want body cameras. Where is that footage going to be stored? Are the police going to use that footage against the community, further criminalize us? It's a two, like, you guys take these positions and you just put them out there and you say, we're a completely objective oversight agency. But the politics are obvious. They were obvious when I found out you were Brad's friend and you were first here. And this is not personal slight, but this is just what we see as cronies. This is what we see when we think like, yo, are we gonna finally have reform this year? So I know I haven't made the last few meetings, and I'm definitely going to be making more of them. We've enjoyed some quality time with the city council who added 1,300 cops. We've been kind of harassing them about that. But the more and more that we come here, and we see you take these positions, and I'm not even talking about the bean counting that's coming up here about all these things that I can't even, I don't have the attention span for. But I'm talking about the positions that I see you guys put out there, and you guys are asking for body cameras to go into home invasions without any debate. We're losing, and this is just me, I'm not going to pretend to speak for everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I'm losing more and more faith that this is nothing more than just an appendage to the NYPD to make it appear like there's oversight. And I'll ask you one last question, because I remember this clearly. This is what tipped me off. You said at one meeting, you said if it were up to you, and this is regardless of what's in the city charter, if it were up to you, you would still want final say-so to be with the commissioner of the NYPD. That means that you guys, or excuse me, not you guys, the head of the CCRB wouldn't want the power to actually you guys are disciplining like five lost vacation days when somebody gets, that was one of the cases with a pregnant woman who was thrown on her stomach. I think that cop, you guys are doing like 5 unpaid vacation days or something like that. Like if I put a pregnant woman on the ground belly down, I'm pretty sure I would lose more than 5 days pay, right? But regardless of the level of kind of discipline that you're asking, you're saying that you would still want, I'm asking you today, you would still want the final say over discipline to be with the police commissioner? And that's just a question I'll just leave for you.
Shannon Jones.
You're not going to answer my question?
No, not right now. I've answered this before, there's no reason to answer it right now.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Jones, and I'm the co-founder of Bronx Sites for NYPD Accountability, affectionately known as Y Accountability. Since the chokehold death of Eric Garner in July of 2014, we have engaged in community activism in the form of direct confrontation with police commanders in the precincts in order to address police brutality, conduct, misconduct, and operational terrorism taking place in our communities. That's for the benefit of those that are not familiar with me. The board is certainly familiar with me because I've appeared here several times, and I make it a point to try to come as often as I can in order to speak on behalf of the community that I live in and entrust me to represent them here every month. So I just want to, before I begin with what I plan to say, I would like to take a moment to address what I've heard so far. The gentleman that's coming to us from Newark, New Jersey, I appreciate every opportunity that communities have to take control over the police departments throughout this country. But I give you fair warning. If you choose to use the New York City CCRB as a framework and as a model, it is a recipe for disaster. Don't do it. Ross Baraka is certainly in tune with his community at large and is aware of his community, and certainly has the skill in order with everyone in Newark, New Jersey, in order to put together a civilian review board that will be effective, that will have teeth, and that will work for the community residents at large. So you can weigh that in with what you have experienced with the board and with what the community is telling you. And as a member of the community, I strongly advise against that. Use the skills that you have in your own town to build something for your people of color that you can be proud of, that will not continue to move forward in the areas of operational terrorism that I'm here once again to state formally on the record, because that's what goes on here. Okay, and also secondly, when the communities come here to speak to the board, everything doesn't always warrant an answer. sometimes things just need to hang in the wind. Out of respect for the people that come here, out of respect for the people that are watching live stream or maybe even tomorrow. And I hope this will not be a pattern going forward where questions are directed specifically to Mr. Emery, but they have to be answered by our members of color on the board. My recommendation to you, people of color, let it be. You being from the hood at some time in the past bears no relevance to your position on the board. It does not appease the communities that get dragged out of their cars on cell phone camera. Communities that get ticketed $100 for $2.75 jump on the turnstile. Doesn't benefit us. It doesn't show the board that you have your pom-poms out, that you rah-rah sis boom bah. It's something that communities of color have borne for 200, 300, and 400 years. That there's always a person of color that has to stand up and justify and give reasons for and objections to other people of color's experience. And as a professional woman, I've learned long ago never to do that. Because at the end of the day, it will be your own people dragged out of cars, excessively ticketed, murdered on the street, called horrible abusive names. Although your paycheck may allow you to be removed from it, we will not allow you to come here and make excuses for a white supremacist organization that continues to brutalize, terrorize, and murder our communities. So with that said, I will move on to my topics of discussion. First and foremost, I've had an opportunity, got a lot of time. First and foremost, I would like to say that I did have an opportunity to review the September 2015 statistical report. Once again, the CCRB fails miserably to cite the statistical issues that I continue to bring to this board. Again, I ask, should I choose to follow a substantiated case with APU charges to an APU court? Where does that document tell me where I need to be? I see that there's a substantiated chokehold in 2015, September. What is the case number for that case? Where does it correspond to the APU trial calendar in order for me to be present and have a voice and stand up for our communities? This is the type of cloak and dagger, sir, in Newark, New Jersey, I hope that you do not do. If you take the time out to review the statistical reports for a period of time, I would say approximately 9 months, 10 months, you will see that critical statistical information has been absent from those reports, such as the substantiated cases by precinct and by borough, the mediations by borough. And at my request last month, I see it added back, but it's still cloaked in missing information. That still does not allow the community to fully and completely engage in the civilian complaint process. We are still cloaked and shielded from the civilian complaint process. That must mean that the communities in the 4-1 precinct, the 4-0 precinct, the 4-7 precinct, the 4-6 precinct, the 4-2 precinct are not allowed to be present at APU trials for substantiated charges in their own communities. And I come here out of my own way, spending my own time. And it is at this point a joke. I don't know whether I'm on Saturday Night Live, Mad TV, or some type of skit. Because for you as a board to sit there with dignity every month in front of us and think that you are doing a good job, it must be a joke. Ashton Kutcher may run out and tell us all that we are being wrong, because you have to do better than this. And I cannot come here every single month asking for information that you already hold, that is already available to you, that for whatever reason you refuse to provide to the community. You know why? After we saw that chokehold for a broken windows offense or alleged offense, the community is actively engaged in putting a stop to police brutality. We want to identify the officers that are in our communities that get transferred to other hood communities to say, no, you won't be here. You were here, but you won't be here. But if I can't be present at an APU trial, I won't know who that is. And I have to rely on who? The police commander, the police lieutenant, the XO, who continually disrespect us and lie to us month after month, year after year, decade after decade. Just today, the police department got busted creating its own parking lane on Skimmerhorn Street. They bought white paint and pretended to create their own parking lanes in a bike lane. What's the big deal about that? But you know what that is? That is the manifestation of the NYPD feeling that they have to obey no rules. No rules apply to them. They don't have to respect anyone. The bike rider on the street, the pedestrian walking, the Department of Transportation that my tax dollars went to strike those bike lanes down. And you're gonna come with your own paint from Home Depot and write cops on the street so you can park freely as you choose? A lady came to the 4-6 precinct meeting 1 year ago to complain that the police department parks on her curb, on her sidewalk, breaking down her sidewalk. A year later, they are still doing it on the side of the 4-6 precinct. This is what this board has allowed them to do with the toothless pandering to the police department. Last month I came here on a Wednesday. The following day I had the expectation, after following the democratic process, that the precinct community guidelines prescribe in terms of attendance and conduct to be elected as recording secretary of the PSA 7. I attended the September meeting, the October meeting, the November meeting, the December meeting, the February meeting, the April meeting, participated in a vote, and did the democratic process to have the commander inform me that I was excused from my duties. Because, again I say, the NYPD is an inherently corrupt and racist institution. It only wants to put in place in precinct council boards people, and I will use my own precinct as an example. The vice president didn't even know what the word abstention meant, but could vote for my removal. These are the type of people that precinct commanders prefer to be in place in our communities because they will cheerlead, they will dance, they are ill-informed, and they counteract. I have said this for 1 year, and I will continue to say it. And I will hope that going forward, as is my request every month that I come here, that you guys do the very best you can with the information that you have. And I'm speaking to the people of color. Because I'm not too far from where you are. And I've said that numerous times. It is weary, and it's been a weary fight since the days of slavery. But we shall not give up. We shall be present, we shall be engaged, we shall confront, and we shall expose, even if it means you. Those videos that are present every month on YouTube that show the PSA 5 shining lights in people's faces, that's a discourtesy, that's a misconduct. You have a First Amendment constitutional right to record any police activity in the public sphere, any police activity investigation, as long as it is a safe distance away from said investigation. Police departments in the city of New York continue to violate those rights. Body cams won't do it. The control is within the community. The control will remain within the community. And I have made made it my mission to ensure that the communities take control of the NYPD because they are out of control, completely out of control. I have watched the Transit Bureau of the 40th Precinct for the entire summer conduct covert investigations against people entering the transit system daily, for which I have pictures and video. They lay behind columns, they lay in doorways, they hide behind fan machines. If you want to deter fair beating, stand in plain sight. Be proud to serve in your position. Do not extort communities of color for $100 when the fare is $2.75. I get off the train every day at Bowling Green. Police officers are in plain sight. If I use the Wall Street station, police officers are in plain sight. Why are they cloaked and why are they hiding in stations of communities of color? Because as we saw in Ferguson, communities of color support the economies of cities through excessive taxing, fines, and summonses. We know this already, and we are exposing it. And as long as the CCRB does not take an active role in calling out that nonsense, I will be here every month to expose you. And I will respectfully request that the members of color do not back up my comments. Can you do at least that for me? Thank you very much.
The Executive Director's report.
First, I want to thank Lauren Click, the Director of Community and Public Programs at the Bronx Museum of the Arts, for assisting us in being here tonight. I will discuss some matters pertaining to the operations of our agency and provide you with highlights from our monthly statistical report. For a full review of the agency's monthly statistics, please visit our website. The year-to-date civilian complaints against the police have decreased by 15%. From January through September 2015, the CCRB received 3,289 complaints compared to 3,857 complaints for the same period in 2014. By category of allegation, year-to-date, discourtesy complaints have decreased by 25%, force complaints by 16%, offensive language complaints by 19%, and abuse of authority complaints by 7%. I wanted to direct all of your attention to the screen here because we do have some slides to illustrate the statistical analysis that we've done this month. From January through September 2015, the agency has received a monthly average of 365 complaints compared to an average of 429 complaints per month for the same time period last year. In September, the CCRB opened 401 new cases, which is down from 433 in August, however, up from 345 in September of last year. In September, the CCRB's total open docket was 1,195 cases. By the end of September, 655 of these cases were in the investigations division, representing 54% of the total, down from 670 in August. Of the total docket, 370 cases were pending board and/or executive staff review. That represented 31%, down from 477 cases pending review in August. The mediation program handled 170 cases, representing 14% of the open docket, up from 150 cases in August. And there were an additional 11 cases on DA hold in September. The CCRB continues to close its cases more efficiently. Of the cases that remain in the CCRB active docket, 91% have been open for 4 months or less, and a record 98% have been open for 7 months or less. Continuing the trend from August, these docket numbers continue to be the best docket numbers since the creation of the office as an independent agency from the New York City Police Department. Our investigators closed 1,689 full investigations from January through September 2015, compared to 1,444 for the same period last year, and resulting in 17% more full investigations. Year-to-date, the average days to close a full investigation has decreased 27% from 2014 before the reforms to 2015. In 2015, the fully resolved The CCRB has fully resolved more cases than it has truncated. This reverses a negative trend from previous years in which more cases could not be fully investigated because the complainant or victim withdrew the complaint, was uncooperative, unavailable, or unidentified. In September, the CCRB fully investigated 52% of the cases it closed and mediated or attempted to mediate an additional 6%. In September, 39% of cases were truncated versus 56% in August, representing a 17% decrease. The CCRB continues to work to lower the number of truncations. We continue to increase interviews outside of the CCRB offices in Lower Manhattan in order to provide easier access to the community. Year to date, our investigators have interviewed 2,018 complainants and witnesses. 1,813 of these were interviewed at the CCRB, and an additional 205 were interviewed at other locations. This means that we conducted 10% of interviews at other locations, which is a steady increase in interviews conducted outside of the CCRB offices from 8% in 2014, 7% in 2012 and 2013, and only 4% in 2010. The September 2015 case substantiation rate of 29% is the highest in CCRB history. September marks the sixth straight month that the CCRB has substantiated more than 20% of its cases that it fully investigates. In comparison, the case substantiation rate was 17% in September 2014. The CCRB also substantiated 17.4% of its allegations, which is also the highest percentage in recent CCRB history. With regard to fully investigated allegations in September, the board substantiated 5% of force allegations, 24% of abuse of authority allegations, 19% of discourtesy allegations, and 12% of offensive language allegations. Investigations using video evidence substantiated allegations in 51% of the cases compared to 22% of substantiated cases in which video was not available. In September, the disciplinary rate was 97% for 34 cases in which police misconduct was substantiated by the board and sent to the police department advocate's office with penalty recommendations. The department declined to prosecute rate for this time period was 3%. The discipline agreement rate was 76% for these 34 cases in which the police commissioner communicated a decision in September. In September, the police commissioner finalized verdicts against 31 officers. 19 of these were guilty verdicts won by the CCRB's Administrative Prosecution Unit, which prosecutes the most serious allegations of misconduct. The APU has conducted trials against 99 respondent officers year to date and trials against 13 respondent officers in September. The new monthly report now contains a table of contents, glossary, appendix, and it's all meant to assist the public in navigating the report. In response to feedback from community member Shannon Jones, who is here with us tonight, and other members of the public, the monthly report has been modified. It now includes a breakdown of complaints by precinct and borough of occurrence on pages 14 to 16, as well as board substantiations by precinct and borough of occurrence on pages 22 to 21. Additionally, penalties for allegations imposed by the police commissioner for non-APU cases according to borough, precinct, and FADO type allegations can be found on pages 25 to 27. And we have also included a disposition information for unsubstantiated, exonerated, and unfounded allegations separately on pages 10 to 14 of the report. And as we go forward, we'll make certain modifications, more so for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you for describing some of the modifications of the report. I guess one suggestion that I heard at a recent meeting that Ms. Jones had made was of particular interest to me, and I'm wondering if we could, maybe internally discuss it or actually the distinguishing complaints against plainclothes officers and uniformed officers. I thought that was a very interesting suggestion and could be helpful to present and for us to understand as an agency on board.
Thank you, Joe. I think it's well said. Any further comments? Okay, so any committee reports?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, as you know, outreach has been very busy, and the trying to fill all the positions that we have open to expand our outreach committee. I want to first say that we do have two of our new outreach persons here, Sylvia and Gregory. And both of them are fully trained on presentations and have already gone out and have been very successful. We decided to take a step back as we were interviewing for the new members of the outreach team. So our average of 25 presentations a month has kind of dropped to 10 per month over the last 5 or so months, so that we can reorganize and re-strategize the launch of this new human capital. But we're still on track with a lot of initiatives. We have several new initiatives that I want to mention, which involve going to police roll calls, police precinct council meetings. We've actually done 20 of those meetings already. Night meetings, the TA President Association, we've done 7. We're also collaborating with the Archers probationaries so that we can do outreach there. We're doing outreach to the homeless community, and we've already completed an outreach to that community. And also 5 events completed with the LGBTQ community. Some of the things that you mentioned in previous reports are just highlighting now as things that have actually been completed since that last report. And so we still have 3 open positions. 3 of these 3 positions are going to be interviewed by our executive director over the next week or so. And we're just excited about the automation and some of the things that we're using as outreach tools to be more effective. So that kind of abbreviates the report.
Any other reports? Any other comments? New business? Old business? All right. Well, I think we are adjourned except for executive session. And we have a motion to go into executive session. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all. Move the public meeting.